we are.
Hey,
Live.
everyone. Welcome to Flavor Talk with the Barbecue Pro Shop Factory team. I am co host Brian Neal, aka Mr. Freak of Smoke Freaks Barbecue.
And I'm Ann Neal, Ms. Freak, and together we're the tongues and testers behind the flavor guide at Barbecue Pro Shop, the world's first comprehensive flavor decoder and buying guide for barbecue and grilling rubs and seasonings. Joining us is our flavor partner going all the way back to 2019, Mr. Jeff Belmonte, owner of Barbecue Pro Shop. Hello,
Hey,
Jeff.
everybody. Welcome. Thanks for
What's
having me.
happening, my man? And tonight we have a very special guest who's quickly become a top force on the Steak Cook-Off Association and who also happens to be the purveyor of three amazing seasonings, Marty Plute of Twisted Steel. Hey, Marty.
Hello, everyone.
How are you doing?
Great.
And I know folks are just joining here. Please feel free to sign up to comment in the chat. So we know who all is here. We'd love to give you a shout out as we recognize folks coming on. While folks are joining, I'll just do a little bit of housekeeping here. Number one, what is Flavor Talk? Well, Flavor Talk is our monthly live stream where we join some of the most interesting folks in the barbecue and grilling game, including the minds and makers behind some of our favorite flavors. And it's really all about learning new and exciting ways to use flavor in cooking, whether that's techniques or combinations or just good old-fashioned shigging. And it doesn't matter if you're cooking on a smoker, cooking on a grill, cooking on your stovetop. What Ann and I are all about is trying to find new ways to use these things that come in a bottle and are colloquially known as barbecue rubs. Because in our few years of really getting into hardcore testing of these things, we've really learned that the sky's the limit. I mean, we barely reach for, those single ingredient seasonings anymore like you get at the grocery store because we've got a barbecue rub that we can use for almost anything. Whether that's, making some kind of sheet pan vegetables or Thanksgiving dinner, there's a barbecue or grilling out rub out there that's kind of perfect for it. And sometimes a lot more than one. Hey, Motley Bowl Q Crew, what is happening? Who else we got tonight, Ann? Who do you see on the list?
Yeah, we got Blazing Star Barbecue. We got Brennan Nielsen, Joe Christopher. We got Brian Wynn. Awesome. There you go. Awesome dude with awesome products. Well said. You guys may have noticed if you've joined us before, we're using a different technology. We have upgraded to StreamYard live streaming software, broadcasting to all those different platforms. It's pretty cool. We think it's a better way to engage with all of our viewers. We think the quality is better. And there's lots of cool features like these ones, Scott and Howdy folks, where we can put your questions and comments up on the screen. So please keep posting. We'll keep sharing and keep welcoming folks. So please ask away. We got a great show planned tonight.
Yep, plenty of stuff to talk about with Marty, both about his seasonings and really what his experience has been like out on the Steak Cook-Offs Association tour. But we really want you guys who have joined tonight to feel free to jump in with questions because that really is going to be what keeps this thing interesting because, I'll only think of so many things to say. But let's have fun and let's get rolling. So, like I said, our special guest tonight is Marty Plute of Twisted Steel. And for those who don't know, Marty is pretty much Steak Cook-Off Association royalty after achieving a record 13 SCA wins in the 2022 season. And he's continuing to tear it up this year. In fact, Marty, I heard you did pretty well last weekend. What happened and where were you?
I lost him.
Hello. You still there?
Yep.
Yeah, so how'd it go this weekend?
We did pretty good. We tied for first, so I would say that's a pretty good day.
Yeah, so whereabouts were you?
Melbourne, Arkansas.
Melbourne, Arkansas. Well, congratulations. I know you're doing
better than pretty good. That's outstanding, Marty.
That's the first time I've ever won the same comp twice, so it was pretty cool.
Yeah. So is that a repeat? You won it last year as well?
I won it the first year I went in 2020.
Gotcha. Well, I know you tied, but I saw the score go by on the ribeye roundup last night, and I was pretty blown away by that. What was that? A 254 point something?
2.
254.2. Yeah. 10th place was a 253.3. So
Wow.
we were in trouble.
So yeah, I know we got a lot of SCA folks joining tonight, so you guys all know what that means. For those who don't, that's less than a half a point away from a perfect score, and a perfect score has really only been done, I'm sure, less than 10 times in the history of SCA. There's been, a few more just over the last couple of years, but it took a long time for anyone to even crack that ceiling. So Marty was knocking on the door last week. So thanks for joining us tonight. Ann and I are big fans of your seasonings. We've used them in competition. In fact, we've got 2 different go-to profiles that we run. Ann usually runs one pretty consistently, and then I'm always tinkering and playing around with other things. And my kind of go-to has the steak appeal as one of its primary ingredients. So definitely like the stuff for competition. But I tell you, the one that I've really been getting into lately is that Lima Loca, or is it Lima Loca? How do you say it?
Lima.
Lima Loca.
That was the big deal at World this year. We had Jimmy Miller called me one day and says, "Is it Lima or Lima?" And I heard a bunch of people in the background, and it was a bet, and it was Lima. So yeah.
Oh, so they decided, or you decided?
No, I told him it was Lima. That's the way it sounds. That's the way it is. So,
Well, I'm glad I tuned in because I thought it was Lima. So fantastic. And I'll tell you, Marty, I use the Lima Loca on our reject steaks from the Warsaw competition where Brian and I were. And we take those ribeyes, we turn them into strips, and we make fajitas out of them. So we use the Lima Loca as a dry brine. And my goodness, this is 2 comps in a row. We've done that with our reject steaks. So you're onto something there. Really fantastic on beef in particular.
Very cool.
Yeah, that Lima Loca. In fact, since we're just getting rolling talking about that one, I'm going to see if I can share it a little bit here, give folks up on the screen a little bit of an idea what we're talking about here. So Lima Loca, Marty, to me, this is one of those classic seasonings that's meant to do a whole bunch of different things. It's super well balanced, but it's got a brightness and a pop to it that I don't really associate so much with barbecue. When it comes to grilling and things like that, it's really a fantastic seasoning. But why don't you tell everybody what you were going for with this particular thing? What's behind it, and what do you like to do with it?
I mean, we like it on a whole lot of stuff, but I mean, it came from kind of growing up as a military brat and living all over. And one of my favorite food was Albuquerque, New Mexico. And we tried.
Hey, Jeff.
Sorry, got a little excited there.
No, it's all good. So you were in Arizona Army?
That was Albuquerque.
I'm sorry, New Mexico. I got my states all wrong.
Yeah.
Only one of those has oceanfront property, right?
Yeah, that's right.
So yeah, I'm sorry to interrupt. Go ahead.
No, I mean that's kind of where we went with it. We played with it for a while and set it in to get samples of it, and it hit the first time, and we enjoyed it and still enjoying it. So it's one of our favorites.
So what are some of the things you like to do with the Lima Loca?
Just simple stuff. Sometimes, I mean, the simple stuff is going to get a couple fresh tomatoes and a bundle of onions and making some fresh salsa out of it. I mean, it's a good taco seasoning. It's a good fajita seasoning.
And you guys can kind of see from the picture that this has got a lot of different ingredients going on there. It's got a bit of sugar, quite a bit of salt, I believe, which I think for me really helps with, that application Ms. Freak was talking about, using it kind of as a dry brine for cut up proteins that you're going to use for fajitas. And what we've been doing, we've tried it a couple different ways. Sometimes we just cut the meat up and sprinkle that stuff on pretty generously, really, and then just throw that in a Ziploc bag for 3-4 hours and let it do its thing. No oil or any liquid at all, and just let the salt kind of go to work and make its own thing. Hey, Nathan says Lima Loca got him kicked off a team.
I don't.
It is that good. We definitely enjoy it for that kind of stuff. Let's see, goes with beef, pork, chicken, veggies, and easily complement all. I totally agree with that. In
Right.
fact, one of the things that we do in our flavor guide is we test it in quite a few different formats, and we're always going to recommend what we think it's very, very best on. And a lot of rubs, you know, you can really put them on just about anything, but we like to call out what the standouts really are. And for us, Elizabeth, it was all of those ones you mentioned. I don't think we tried it on veggies yet, but we're certainly going to need to.
So
Another thing we like to do with the flavor guide is we break down through a series of tests that Ann and I do to try and figure out really what's the flavor balance of these seasonings. As you guys can see right here, this Lima Loca is really well balanced, leans on the salty side, but it brings quite a bit of everything, which just results in really big, big flavors.
And
I'll go ahead and turn that off though here because get the faces back up.
I'll just add, in terms of the flavor guide testing that Brian has mentioned, the testing that we do, it's all blinded. So when we are doing our various different ways of testing, we don't know what that seasoning is. It's got a code name, like we're on A439 or something now. So quite a lot that we've done. And we take all kinds of notes. We record our impressions. We, put all that together to come up with our, scores and the ratings that we do. But one of the things we do is we take some notes just as we're testing. And I just wanted to share some of the things that we said to ourselves when we were testing and not knowing what this seasoning was. So one of the things that I said was moderate tartness greets my taste buds along with a bounty of herbs that bring forward freshness and crispness. Mr. Freak, he said, it tastes a little wild. And I just love that when we went back and looked at your branding on the bottle, Marty, because I think you talk about flavor with a twist or crazy flavor or something. Wait, I got it right here. A crazy twist of flavor. Mm-hmm. So that was just really cool to me to see when we revealed what that seasoning was, that, yeah, it was all that and more. And I'm a sucker for anything with lots of herbs. And Mr. Freak, when you put that shot up of the seasoning blend with all the different textures and ingredients, you can really just see that there's something really special with that one. You can just tell it's kind of art just looking at that macro shot of the seasonings. Well done, Marty.
Thank you.
Love for that one.
For me, the real standout with that Lima Loca, though, is that lime pop that comes with it. And I'm wondering, how in the heck do you get that into a barbecue seasoning or a grilling seasoning? Is that like literally lime zest in there, or how do they do it?
It is lime zest, yes. And it took us a while to find exactly the one we wanted. And when you're testing at home, getting stuff ready, and then you go to the manufacturer, it's a little different. So, but it worked. I mean, they nailed it the first time we sent it in. So.
Right on. So Lima Loca was, I believe, your second seasoning, right? Well, before we get too much farther, let's take a bunch of steps back and talk about how in the world did you really get into the game of producing these seasonings for the rest of us to enjoy. I mean, I've been around this game at least 10 years now, and I never heard of Twisted Steel until just the last couple of years. So tell me how you got here.
Right. I mean, riding around the country, cooking steaks sometimes with the wife, sometimes with friends, and been using what we were testing as far as that rub, the original. And one day, a buddy of mine who's on here, Bob, he says, "Why aren't you producing that?" I'm like, "I have no desire to do it." And it ended up happening. So that's how that happened. So
the first rub in your lineup, that was Steak Appeal.
Steak Appeal, which was a year old in March.
Okay, so really this stuff has not been out that long. But I mean, Ann and I have just been in the SCA game now. This is our third year going pretty serious at it. It seemed like last year we would hear about that Steak Appeal at every single award ceremony. People were talking about using that. So I assume you developed this specifically for your state competition game, or what? How did
Yes.
that come to be?
Just looking for something to complement what I was using, and I always have used Johnny Joseph as my base, and just needed something to complement it. We searched a long time for an SPG that we're comfortable every week after week. I mean, there's some good ones out there we used and did good with, but we found one that took us over the top, but it all had to work together. So that's how we developed it to work with Johnny's and just kept on rolling with it.
So Marty, how do you deploy the stake appeal? Because I know there's some folks out there that would love to
I'll give you my
get a little
recipe.
info from you.
And how do you use it in the competition stake
As far
process?
as my steaks go, it is equal parts Johnny Joseph steak rub, the steak appeal, and Stackhouse, and then a half a part of Big Jim's steak rub, and that's it. Now,
Yeah.
as far as dusting goes at the end, I mean, that's when things get change. I mean, you never know. I mean, I always have people say, well, I dust with this. Well, how do you know you should dust with that? You don't know. You take a sample bite, then you decide what you're going to dust with and just keep on going from there. But those 4 are always in everything I cook. So
That's a really interesting point, though, about the dusting. And for those of you who aren't in the SCA game, what he means is a lot of times once our steaks come off the grill and we're waiting to turn those into the judges, we'll put a little light layer of a little something on the very top of that thing right before we send it into the judges, just to make sure there's a bunch of big flavor that's going to hit their tongues right away.
Or the bottom of that thing.
mm-hmm.
And these are typically, they're only going to take one bite of whatever you're turning in. So that one bite's got to make a big impression. And maybe most importantly, it's got to not offend anybody. It's got to be all the stuff they like, and it can't be too much of any one thing, or you're liable to get dinged. So this steak appeal stuff, it sounds like you specifically developed it for your program in competition in cooking. Are there a bunch of other teams out there that you know of that?
I know of people done with it, probably not a whole lot of using it the way I use it, but I didn't originally design it to be in the base. It was always designed to be as a finisher. There's a lot of people using it as a finisher. I still use it as a finisher also.
Mm-hmm.
And like I tell people, I said, if you've got a practice steak and it comes off and you taste it and it's so salty you can't eat it and it's going to, be trouble, hit it with steak appeal. It'll kill the salt immediately. So, it helps. It helps in that way too. So,
yeah,
it's really got that. It's got a terrific balance of sweet and salt that they really just kind of almost cancel each other out and create this neutral palate that for me is followed up really strong with that pepper pop that I want with any kind of beef. And really, I love pepper so much that I put it on anything. So, I like the steak appeal just as much on a pork chop with nothing else on it as I do in my steak recipes.
absolutely.
It's super good on, and pork and chicken, those are so neutral that once you put something that's actually got some flavor to it on there, that to me is where the magic of grilling happens. You got to add those seasonings, you got to add the fat, and you got to have the fire. Once you got those 3 things going, it's just a matter of how much of it can you handle.
Yeah. And I would say, with the flavor guide on steak appeal, I don't know, Brian, if you're going to put that one up, but we rated that one a 3.344 on our flavor guide. And so that last 4 is for heat. Don't let that, freak you out, so to speak. That 4 is not going to be, too aggressive. In fact, when we were doing our blind testing, one of the things that I made note of about the heat was that it kind of was creeping in, left a tingle on my lips. But I made a note that it was still totally approachable in terms of that spiciness. And I think that's a great, magical recipe that you have where all those other ingredients, especially that sweet, is kind of helping to balance that out. So, really nice. Brian and I both felt that this one again, we didn't know what it was. There's some potential to use this in comp. We're going to think about this in our SCA game. And then we, revealed what it was. We're like, nailed it. Very cool. And we've done just that.
I think what's fascinating is whenever I talked to you guys last Monday about this, and you guys telling me that all of your testing is blind, I just did not expect that. I don't know why, but I didn't. So I thought that was really cool.
Yeah, we figured out pretty early on that, whatever someone puts on the label has kind of a subliminal effect on how you're going to perceive something. If it says it's a sweet rub, you're going to be like, oh, wow, this is really sweet. Even if it isn't necessarily so, or it isn't the dominant flavor. Almost all the seasonings out there anymore are some kind of blend of salt and sugar and, some garlic powder and different forms of pepper, either chili or black pepper or white pepper, and people tend to follow that kind of time-tested formula of, a little bit of aromatic in there to go with that. But it's just so fascinating to see all the different ways people put these, really pretty simple blend of ingredients together and add their own little magic to them to create something special. And this is definitely one of them. So there's the bill of goods that Ms. Freak was talking about there with the 3-4-3-3, super balanced, but it's going to bring a little bit more kick to something. The way we like to use this flavor guide, it kind of sounds like more of a data-driven version to what great cooks like Marty can just do in their head. So he knew he had Johnny Joseph, which is, a pretty salt-leaning seasoning, but I believe it has no sugar whatsoever.
One sweet. 3-3.
So in the competition game, you almost have to have some of that sweetness for a couple reasons. One, it just really, even if people don't detect it, that's how Pepsi won the Pepsi Challenge. It was sweeter than Coke. Even though more people like Coke, that sweeter thing back to back, people would say, oh, I like this one better. The other thing that a little bit of sugar does for you in steak cooking is gives you that color that you really need. As the sugars start to caramelize, you'll get that mahogany color on there. So, when I'm using the flavor guide and how I arrived at using Twisted Steel as one of my balances to the Johnny Joseph, is I was specifically looking for something that would bring in a good amount of sweetness, not too much because I don't want things burning and turning black on me, but without setting the overall great balance that the Johnny Joseph seasonings had. And I found this was a perfect one to pair up with it. And in fact, when we were talking the other day, Marty, you were telling me, in fact, let me end my sharing here so we can get back to the faces. You were telling me that, what was it? Every seasoning has a best friend, right? Is that how you put it?
Right.
So what would you say the best friend is for the Twisted Steel?
Well, it has two best friends now.
Yeah.
It was obviously Johnny Joseph, but the Stackhouse is. Once I met those guys 2 years ago at Memphis in May and started using their stuff, it just changed my life. I mean, it changed everything we do. I mean, we use it religiously. Those three together, and then, like I said, the gym. But those two are definitely best friends, or those three, I should say.
Hey, Jeff, Stackhouse, the MW Smoker brand, is a new line of seasonings at Barbecue Pro Shop. I think
live as of yesterday.
Yeah.
Do you use the hot or do you use the regular?
See, I love the hot. I have to be careful with it because Sheila does not like jalapeno, so we have to be very careful how we use it. It is really good on ribs, so we've been testing it on ribs and playing with ribs, but those are good on ribs. But
that's what I just recently, when I got the samples of it, I used it on ribs. Oh, and it really was. I just was blown away by how good it was.
Pretty
as far
special.
as and it's crazy to me the amount of SPG rubs that are out there in general, and how it's even possible that they can all taste differently.
They do. I mean, and
they really do. It's remarkable what people do to it, and that's what I'm interested too. Is when you look at that flavor guide of Steak Appeal, or you read anything that Mr. and Ms. Freak come up with. How do you feel about the way they evaluate those? I haven't really asked anyone. Like, what's your impression when they read it? Like, did you get it? They missed that? Or wow, how did they know that? Yeah, that was exactly what I was going for. I'm interested to hear what your impression of those are.
Well, I was fascinated like last week when they told me it was blind, it blew my mind. I mean, for them to be that, what we think that balanced, when you don't believe, you believe that, okay, yeah, but then when you find out it's blind, it was like, that was really cool. No, I mean, heck, I've been happy with my 3 flavor guides. So
Yeah, and the whole point of it is we're not trying to pick out, the best rub in the world, because that's going to be subjective for everybody. What we're really trying to do is help people find ways to explore and use these seasonings in ways that they may not have thought of, and to maybe find a particular seasoning they may like, help them find its best friend that should go along with it, because we tend to see it the same way. I don't know if I'm clever enough to have come up with a creative way to say it like that, but just like salt needs pepper, there's not a lot of seasonings out there that I can't make better by adding a little bit of this or a little bit of that, just to get the impact I'm looking for. And especially in the world of competition cooking, things have just, to me, it's kind of a war of escalation when it comes to flavor. Maybe when SCA first came out, you could get away with salt and pepper on them, but today you're gonna have a hard time winning without big flavors, because the steak they just ate right before yours had big flavors on it. So.
Hey, speaking of flavor, check out this comment from world champion and great friend of ours, Scott Nardi. Look at this. First time he used it, won with a 254.3.
Yeah, anytime you get up into the 254s, that's about as good as it can get, and you're talking about a 1/10 of a point somewhere that someone decided not to give you out of the maximum they have. So that's just a monster score, and no doubt people are getting them with the twisted steel. So let's move on and talk about your newest product, which we just got the opportunity to start testing about a month ago. And just went up on Barbecue Pro Shop, in the last 2 months, I think, the Sultry Smoke. I would love to hear about this one and how you developed it. Really cool.
Well, that was by far the hardest one. I hated it and hated it and hated it, and just kept on working, trying to get it right. Battled with it. We tested, did some cooking, just never did hit exactly the way we wanted. Then we introduced the orange peel. And once we did that, it just changed everything.
So what were you going for with this one? Was this meant to be another competition rub or something else?
Definitely. I've used it on steak down south. I won't use it up above St. Louis. I won't use it in St. Louis, but I will as farther south I get. It complements everything that I already do. It's a great barbecue rub. We're having a really good time with it. It has a best friend too. So does Lima Loca, but it has a great best friend. But we just didn't. That was a fun one. It was a hard one to do though. So I wanted something that had some heat because I didn't have anything with heat. Lima Loca was just kind of a fun rub. It's not competition, obviously. It was more backyard patio ancillary, but yeah.
Ms. here got a 4th place, the first ancillary I ever did, and it definitely had some Lima Loca and some Croy Valley seasonings as well.
Right.
It was a freaky taco, as I like to call it. So.
Croy Valley has some great stuff.
Yep, they absolutely do. So you mentioned a couple of different concepts when it comes to putting together flavors for competition. And the first one was a few minutes ago. You said when it comes to finishing and how you're going to finish, you said you like to taste it first. So your practice steak, of course, you're not going to taste your production, but what are you looking for there? Like, what kind of assessments are you making flavor-wise once you've done your practice steak and had a chance to taste it? What's going into your finishing strategy and how you're going to go about it?
First, I want to make sure it has everything it needs. Does it have the salt? Does it have the savory? Does it have the sweet? What is it missing at that point? And then I have 5 different grinders, all color coded, so I know within every one of them. And then I decide. So Our favorite is obvious. It's stupid how simple it is, but it actually wakes up every flavor that's already on your steak, and that's just hit it with some pink salt. That's all you got to do, and it just livens everything up that's already on there and makes it come alive. But I do have 5 different ones I use. Like I said, if I have a salty version, I'll have to hit it with some steak appeal. But I mean, we document how many clicks each steak gets, as far as. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Give us some advice on the best thumb grinders out there, because we had a major fail. Your hometown.
Yes. Sorry about that.
With you, and I think you were one of the only folks to get multiple calls in all the different categories, pork steak and the steak and all of that. Congratulations. But yeah, I think Mr. Freak, I don't know if it was like the steam coming off of the steak, but as he was applying it, it just kind of stopped coming out. And then you were banging it on something and the whole thing broke open. I had mine, and
I was going to say, you did very well with a nice win.
She turned in, I guess she had her own thumb grinder.
Yeah, I treat them with care and
clean them every time. I mean, that's
every time. Keep them out of humidity and heat conditions. I try to shield them from light and.
Yeah, we actually keep ours in a big Ziploc bag with rice in it, just to keep them dry at all times.
Yeah,
whether they have spice in it or not, we have it in a Ziploc bag with rice.
The rice will make a big difference too, and that's a great tip for everybody out there who has to deal with these seasonings in extreme conditions. And I tell you, if you're in a steak trailer on a 100-degree day, it can get pretty extreme in there. Another thing I've learned with those grinders, they're just these little thumb grinders that's kind of like a little pepper grinder, is if you get too close to a steaming steak, that steam will get right up in there and gunk it up real quick. So, back that thing off 3-4 inches just to maybe help with those things getting gunked up. But the other thing I wanted to talk about with regards to picking flavors is you mentioned some regional differences in terms of what you're going to use and how you're going to go about it. And I've really not ventured too much outside the Midwest. So, I'm still very much winging it as I go. I don't have a strategy for Texas or a strategy for Mississippi. I tend to just, run whatever my alternate to Miss Freak seasoning is. So what have you learned about the way the regions work? What do they like in different parts of the country?
I mean, my wheelhouse is Arkansas, Alabama, Mississippi. It's just for some reason I do good down there, and I guess it's because that's my flavor profile I like the best, I guess. So I run, a little more heat down there, and I love it. Come to closer to where I live, I have to take the heat out. Now, where you guys live, I have no idea what works because I can't figure it out. But so I don't know. Wisconsin, I've always done good in, but I don't go up there enough anymore. So,
yeah, there was always a thing in the Kansas City Barbecue Society where people from around our part of the country would talk about it's a whole different world above I-80 and below I-80.
Oh,
and we certainly found that to be the case. We got to where we could do pretty well in either direction, but we cooked on drum smokers, and Central Illinois was just always drum smoker country for whatever reason. They like those drum smokers. Now I don't know if you could win a barbecue competition in Indiana if you weren't cooking on an outlaw. It'd be hard.
True.
They've just grown to love that flavor around there.
And that's something about last year being, 13 wins, but it was 6 different states. So it wasn't, it was Oklahoma, Alabama, Illinois, Missouri. Pretty much everything but Texas. Texas, I don't know how to cook down there either. I've not figured that one out. But
well, when you're down at Worlds, though, you've got judges from all over the country.
Sure.
So, who knows? All you can really do is hope you get a good number and cook the best steak you can. And then it's just you against the judges, right?
Yeah. And that's the only time I've had any luck in Texas was at Worlds. So any other time I think I've gotten a 10th place call down there. And I've cooked quite a bit in Texas. So.
Yeah. Well, we haven't ventured so much in that direction, but we're just starting to make our way, a little bit farther from home. Collinsville was our first time in that part of the country cooking steak, and
I-
boy, other than the weather, that was a really fun time down there. And, it seems like you guys got a whole different barbecue scene down there around St. Louis than what we have up. Ann and I are near Chicago in Indiana, just across the state line, but a whole bunch of different folks that I'd never run into down there before.
Right.
And that to me is really one of the coolest thing about, competition cooking is that you get to travel around, you make this big family of folks who really willing to, give you the spare tire off their truck if you needed it, or the shirt off your back. And more than anything else, it's just all the help that we like to give each other when it comes to learning new things and new tricks. And it's been super cool to see so many of the people in our live stream tonight offering up advice. Nathan is apparently an expert in using the Lima Loca. He's used a million things. Great to see Scott Nardi, a world champion, jumping in with some advice on how to use this stuff. I'm wondering, Marty, if you've got any other cooking tips for us for just, how to get more out of our backyard cooking. I understand you use, what is it, a PK 360?
In competition, yes.
Gotcha. And how about at home? Are you on the gas grill, or are you using a PK there too?
I have a PK 360 out back also. Got a 300. Got an original. But my go-to is the egg. I mean, for everyday cooking, it's just egg is so good. Any ceramic is just.
It's a great cooker. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's just easy. So got a couple Smoking Brothers out there. I mean, we love them all, but
We
my
do love
go-to.
them all. We love them
So
all.
on that egg cooker, are you more of a run it hot and fast, or more of a let it run all night kind of guy?
As far as which one?
As using those egg cookers.
Oh, no, I mean, mainly it's when you get home. I can have that thing charcoal going and meat on in 7 minutes on an egg. It's just that quick.
All right, well, let's turn it over to some audience questions, because we've had a few coming in here. Bob
Here's one.
Gonzalez. Yeah, here's one. What do you think, Marty? Does steak selection impact your flavor profile or finish?
That's a great question.
Yes. Well, let's take this weekend into account. I mean, I was 8th on my table, got a nice steak, to turn in, but you don't get a great steak, when you're turning around on a single. Normally on a double, you can work it out, but on a single, and we took one bite of the spinalis this weekend and we spit it out. That's how bad it was. I mean, got up into the eye and it started tasting better. It was just something about the steak. So, but yeah, definitely. Definitely on your finish. I mean, everybody's got their steak they love, so that they love to cook. So that's the one you're going to work hard at. So,
what's your favored cut?
1 through 3.
Try hard or 1, 2,
1
3?
through 3.
Yep.
Last this weekend was a 3. Yeah, it was barely a 3, but it was a 3. So
Yeah, those are the ones I like as well. But boy, if you don't get a good number, you're probably not going to get one of those steaks, or it's not a nice one. There may still be a ragged doorstop sitting up there.
Yeah, number 1 normally sitting there because it's not cut right. But yeah, no, we had a great. I don't know. I know I talked to Shane Lynn, who ran the comp, or that's his comp, and I'm telling you, whoever cut the steaks this weekend did a whale of a job. So.
Yeah. So would you do a different seasoning profile if you got stuck with a number 6 or a 7? You're up in there in the spinalis range. Are you taking a different approach to how you're going to season that steak, or is it more about cooking?
No, but if you ever see how I season the steak, it's not fun. Like when I season the steak, there's only going to be one good side. There's never going to be. I'll never have a choice of, if I mess up the front side, to be able to use the back side. It's not going to work, because you cannot get another drop of seasoning on the back side of my steak. As much as I can put on there and as much as it can handle. So it's weird. So Johnny and I did a class a couple weeks ago together, and it's weird to see how little seasoning he uses and how much I use, and how they taste almost the same kind of thing.
It's a really good point. Brian and I, I kind of have my OG profile that I stick with, and he does a lot more testing and kind of experimentation. And, we're kind of detail freaks. Well, not kind of, we're total detail. And we have a very precise recipe with, a half tablespoon, and measured ingredients, and it's level, not rounded, and, all of that. And
Very much the Johnny Joseph mold there.
That's right.
no, Johnny, I thought, had the rounded measurements. If I recall from the class that we took, when I'm measuring my seasonings, those are flat. There's no rounded, kind of quality.
Oh, yeah.
I know that I apply way more seasoning than Mr. Freak. I know I do. I look at his seasoning jar. I'm like, there's nothing in there. You got to put more on, dude.
I start with a set amount, and when that thing's empty, it's gone. So I don't know if that's a good way to go. There's probably a reason I'm trailing Ms. Freak in points. So.
That's Johnny's system, though. I mean, it's X amount for the steak, and that's it.
But sometimes your steak is a different size after you trim it,
Yeah.
depending on what's going on and what you need to cut off and how you shape it and all that. So I like to let the steak decide.
Yeah.
And to have enough, for any circumstance.
Yep, I agree.
So, hey, Mike Masters wants to know, Marty, if you've got anything else in the pipeline coming out in the seasonings or sauce department.
No, I've got some friends that big names in the barbecue business that stick with 3 and just let it go. Just take it easy. So that's good advice I will take. He said 3 or 4 and don't do anymore. So that's kind of my theory. I mean, like I said, Lima was only, it was July, it was a year old. Sultry won't be a year old till November. I'll just kind of just see what we can do with these 3. I mean, just play. If something comes along, we'll do it. But I mean, it's right now I don't have any inspiration of anything.
So when you're not out there, chasing competition steak glory, what do you do for a living? What's the rest of your life all about?
We just work and got a grandbaby coming, so that's kind of cool.
Oh,
Got a youngest son's fixing to get married, so it's just loving life. So
living life and loving it.
Yep.
Well, Marty, we really, really appreciate you coming on with us tonight. It's been awesome talking with you and, getting to learn a little bit more about how you do things. I've definitely picked up a few tips just in the form of this conversation, things I really hadn't thought of, to try in my steak game, like putting way more seasoning on the bottom than the top. Mm-hmm. Now, back in our KCBS days when we were boxing, we'd always do stuff like that. We were putting all kind of MSG on the bottom and, things like that to hit that tongue and open it up. But I hadn't really thought to do it in the context of steaks, but you're just opening my eyes to all the different ways that, we can improve our game and different angles to take and all of that. So Thank you so much for coming on tonight.
Well, thank you guys for the opportunity.
Yeah, thanks to everyone who joined us tonight and sent in the questions. We really appreciate it. It's great to see so many names I know and a bunch of names I don't know coming up in the list tonight. So Aaron wants you to smile, Marty. And with that, I think we will call it a night. So thanks again, everybody. And we'll see you next month for the next edition of Flavor Talk.
Thank you, guys.
Everybody.
Bye.
Good night, everybody.